In the bustling town of Karam, a small traveling circus set up on the outskirts. Among its performers was a very short man, Hadi, who had a peculiar hunchback. He was the star of the show, making people laugh with his acrobatics and charming audience with his jokes. On the night of a big performance, a tragic accident occurred. Hadi, attempting an elaborate trick, fell from a high platform and hit his head on the ground with a sickening thud. The crowd gasped, and the other performers rushed to his side. A hush fell over the tent. When the medics arrived, they confirmed Hadi was lifeless. The ringmaster, panicking, looked at the body and said, "What will we do now?" In his shock, he blurted out an absurd idea. "We can't let the people know he's dead. We'll hide it." The ringmaster, Faisal, knew that news of Hadi's death would ruin the circus. In his panic, he decided to carry the body away. He spotted a nearby house owned by the kind-hearted old man, Rami, who had always supported the circus. Faisal thought quickly and dragged Hadi's lifeless body to the door. Rami, a man who rarely had guests, was startled when Faisal knocked. "What brings you here at this hour?" Rami asked, his wrinkled face curious. Faisal quickly explained that Hadi had accidentally hurt himself and was simply unconscious. Without thinking, Rami allowed Faisal to bring the unconscious Hadi into his home for the night. Rami didn't sleep that night. Something felt off. The body of Hadi was still lying on his bed, and the more Rami stared at him, the more a dreadful thought took shape. What if he's dead? What if I've just agreed to shelter a dead body? Fear crept into his mind. He tiptoed toward the body, trembling. He wasn't sure if he should check for a pulse or leave it alone. When he accidentally bumped the bed, Hadi's body fell to the ground with a soft thud. Startled, Rami thought for a moment that Hadi had come back to life. But when he checked again, he saw that the little man was still motionless. Rami couldn't shake the feeling that he was part of something terrible, so he panicked. The next morning, Rami made a decision. He could not risk being caught with a dead body. He carefully wrapped Hadi in a blanket and carried him to the next house, belonging to his neighbor, Jamila. "Jamila, you must help me," Rami said in a voice filled with fear. "I can't explain, but there's a problem at my house. Please hide this man." Jamila, a woman of few questions but much suspicion, looked at Rami, then at the blanket. "What's going on, Rami? Why are you so nervous?" Rami didn't answer. He simply left, hoping Jamila would take care of the body. Later that day, Jamila sat with the blanket in her living room, her curiosity growing with every moment. The more she thought about it, the more she began to fear that Rami had brought something awful to her doorstep. She couldn't risk being involved in anything dangerous, and her mind began to race with thoughts of how to hide the body without anyone finding out. What if she was accused of something terrible? Unable to shake the anxiety, Jamila made a rash decision. She would sneak the body into the house of the wealthy merchant, Hassan. Hassan was known for his cold demeanor, but Jamila figured he wouldn't ask too many questions. When Jamila arrived at Hassan's mansion, she knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Thinking quickly, she slipped inside and placed the body in a corner of the study. However, as she turned to leave, she found Hassan standing behind her. "What is this? And why are you sneaking around my house?" he asked. Jamila was panicked. She mumbled, "It's nothing, Hassan. Please, I beg you, don't ask questions. Just let me go." Hassan looked suspiciously at her and the blanket, but decided not to push further. Jamila quickly left, leaving the body behind. Later that night, Hassan sat in his study trying to enjoy a quiet evening. But his peace was shattered when he glanced at the blanket in the corner of the room. Curiosity got the better of him, and he slowly approached. His hand trembled as he opened the blanket to reveal Hadi's body. "Hadi? Is this a joke?" Hassan muttered to himself. "How did this man end up in my house?" He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Suddenly, panic set in. He was now afraid that he had been drawn into something he didn't understand. His mind raced with thoughts of how to dispose of the body without anyone noticing. As Hassan debated what to do, he began to hear voices outside the door. His heart leapt into his throat. He thought the authorities were coming for him. In his panic, he wrapped the body back up in the blanket and decided to sneak it to the house of his friend Zaid. Zaid, a quiet, trustworthy man, was the perfect person to help. Hassan rushed over, knocked on the door, and as soon as Zaid opened it, he pushed the bundle into his hands. "I don't know what's going on, Zaid, but I need you to hide this," Hassan said quickly before rushing off without another word. Zaid was bewildered as he stood in his doorway, holding the bundle in his hands. What in the world is going on? He wondered aloud. He carefully unwrapped the blanket to see the small, lifeless man inside. Zaid gasped. Hadi's face was pale and Zaid's heart raced. "What have I gotten myself into?" he asked, trying to convince himself that he wasn't involved in anything criminal. He didn't know what to do. Was he now complicit in a crime? Zaid quickly decided to get rid of the body, but in his panic, he mistakenly thought it was better to give it to his neighbor, Layla. Layla, a well-respected woman in the town, had a keen sense of observation. When she opened the door to see Zaid holding the bundle, her instincts told her something was wrong. "What's this?" she asked sharply. Zaid, who was trembling, blurted out, "Please just take it." "I can't explain, they'll blame me." Layla was shocked, but before she could stop him, Zaid had already left. She felt a deep chill as she looked at the body. Panic crept into her thoughts, and she quickly decided to hide the body in the cellar, hoping no one would find it. But Layla couldn't stop worrying. She felt as though the entire town was about to turn against her. Days passed, and the body continued to move from house to house. Each person involved grew more and more paranoid, afraid that someone would find out what they had done. Each person thought they had caused the death of the little performer, and each person believed they were now hiding a crime. The authorities began to suspect something was wrong, but no one had any clear answers. People began to whisper rumors about the performer who had gone missing. What had happened to him? No one knew, but the fear in the town continued to grow. One evening, the body was passed once again, this time to a family who had no idea what they had become part of. They thought they were simply helping a friend by hiding the body, but when they opened the blanket, they realized it was Hadi. Where did this come from? The family wondered. They panicked and tried to dispose of it, but it wasn't long before the authorities arrived, investigating the strange movements of the body. The news of Hadi's body being passed from house to house reached the magistrate's office. The town's officials were baffled by the strange series of events. How could so many people be involved in this mystery without realizing what had happened? The authorities rounded up the individuals involved, accusing them of murder. They were all brought to trial, terrified that they would be blamed for Hadi's death. As the trial began, the accused individuals stood before the magistrate trembling in fear. One by one, each person admitted to hiding the body, convinced that they were responsible for Hadi's death. They shared their stories, and soon the truth began to emerge. But just as the magistrate was about to pass judgment, a shocking twist occurred. Hadi, the little performer, suddenly sat up in the courtroom. He was very much alive. "What's going on?" he asked, rubbing his head. "Did I miss something?" The room went silent in disbelief. Everyone stared at him, confused and shocked. Hadi had been knocked unconscious during his fall, but no one had realized it. He had never actually died. The people who had been accused of hiding the body were stunned. They had gone to great lengths, passing the body around, believing they were covering up a crime. Now they realized they had all been part of a grand misunderstanding. The magistrate, trying to regain control of the situation, struggled to process what had happened. He couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the entire situation. Hadi looked around at all the people who had unknowingly been involved in his supposed death. "I'm sorry for the trouble I caused," he said with a smile. "I didn't mean to cause so much panic." The townspeople were both relieved and embarrassed. They had all been caught in a ridiculous web of confusion, and now they had to live with the consequences. Despite the confusion, life in Karam returned to normal. Hadi resumed his performances, but he was careful to avoid any more dangerous stunts. The townspeople, now aware of how easily they could be caught in a misunderstanding, began to laugh about the entire ordeal. The little hunchback's death had caused enough trouble for the entire town, but at least they could now find humor in the madness. Hadi learned a valuable lesson that day. Even when life seems to be at its worst, sometimes a little comedy can help heal the wounds. He also learned not to perform dangerous tricks, especially in front of a crowd as nervous as the one in Karam. As time passed, Hadi became the town's hero, not for his performances, but for the hilarious mystery he had unintentionally caused. The townspeople would often laugh about the strange days when they all thought they had killed the little hunchback. And Hadi, still short and still with a hunch, took it all in stride, knowing that sometimes the funniest stories are the ones that seem the most absurd.